Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinaya Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharani Visesasmi Vadi Krishna. So, as you know, first offense to the holy name is to blaspheme or criticize devotees. And Krishna likes devotees. And so he doesn't like it when we don't like devotees. So I have experienced that there's certain topics that are really difficult, not to understand with the head, but to actually practice. And this is one of them. The other one is cooperation, and so they're similar. This is my experience. And I think you also know this. You may have heard 100 classes on don't criticize, and 2 days later you start criticizing. Isn't it? So it's not that you just hear it, and hearing's enough. There's got to be something that changes within you. Otherwise, if you just hear and nothing changes, then nothing changes. And so you have more knowledge, but you know more, but nothing inside of you changes. You want to move up? You need to move closer? Make more room. You sit over here, maybe? So I've been asked a lot to give classes on relationships. I've been asked a lot to give classes on cooperation and offenses and criticizing over the years. And when I'm asked, part of me says, I don't want to do it. Because knowledge, unless I have like days and days and days to do things, to really get you to reflect and start to transform, in these areas, if there's no transformation, the knowledge doesn't do much. Because we're so conditioned by pride. And pride is what causes us to criticize. Did you know that? That's it. That's what it is. And don't ever tell yourself it's anything other than pride, because that would be lying to yourself. It's purely pride. That's what it is. You may say, no, but this person is like that, and they did this wrong, and they mistreat me. No, there's none of that. Criticism is pride. Unless you're trying to help that person, you're trying to protect yourself from being abused, or you're trying to protect someone else from abuse. Anything else, any other criticism, is our own pride. And that's confirmed by Bhaktisiddhanta when he said, the reason I criticize others is because of my utter lack of humility. Yes?
I was thinking one of the reasons which I see often is sense of entitlement.
Because of my position?
No, kind of expectation that somebody has to do something for me.
Yeah.
And victim mentality.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there are many reasons. We'll get into those in the next few days. We'll cover them.
And I see it's
pervasive.
This a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pervasive. So that's why I'm saying, without getting into, this is a general introduction, there's going to have to be some transformation of our conditioning. Because it's our conditioning that's causing us to think that we have a right to criticize, that we're better, that we need to pull somebody down, that we need to tell the world, we need to get back at this person because they said something to us that made us feel bad. Whatever it is, we're deeply rooted in this conditioning. And that's why we should we should never think that simply hearing is sufficient. Hearing has to be motivated with a desire to be better, the desire to improve. Otherwise, you can hear the rest of your life about how you should be humble and how you shouldn't criticize. And, it'll last a few days. And 3 days later, you'll be back at it again. And I have lots of experience of this, both personally from my angle and also from the angle, personally as a student and then from the angle as a teacher. I have. And you also have this experience. You listen to a class and you walk out and you say, wow, that class was so inspiring. And then someone who wasn't in the class said, well, what did he say? And you said, I don't know, but it was really inspiring. Or it was an hour class and you say 3 things that took like about 45 seconds. And so it's kind of, something happened, but you're not sure what happened. And then a few days later, it's like everything's back to normal again. And nothing changed. So in these particular areas, humility, overcoming the tendency to criticize, working together, which requires compromise and humility, in these areas, this is what I've seen to be the most difficult to transform. Especially if you don't want to. Then it'll never happen. It's impossible. And especially also if you don't think you have a problem with this. Oh, I don't criticize. I'm humble. So Prabhupada said, as soon as you think you're advanced, you're in a dangerous position. As soon as you think, no, I don't have a problem with this, dangerous. Hare Krishna. Thakur Haridas ki jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I can't stop. Classes ended. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Ram. I have to do 192 rounds now. Oh no. Hare Krishna. That actually happened to me once in Mayapur. I got some blessing and I couldn't stop chanting. I mean, I stopped after a while. But I wasn't chanting the mantra was chanting me. Hare Ram. Now, I think I was mentioning last night in class that something, just think about this. This is amazing. This is ginger tea with lemon and honey, I think. Something like that. So let's say ginger, lemon, honey. Yeah. So let's say ginger, lemon, and honey. You love it. It's your favorite drink. And I say, there's poison in it. It could kill you. And you say, give me that drink. I love ginger lemon. You drink it. Right? That's really stupid. Right? Shastra says to criticize a devotee is poison to your spiritual life. And we've heard it, we've read it, there's stories all through the Bhagavatam about it. We're going to discuss all the stories in the Bhagavatam in the next 4 days about this. And we still say, after we've heard it all, we say, give me that drink. Yes? That's amazing. What does that mean? That means the tendency to criticize is deeply rooted. Deeply, deeply, deeply rooted. That we can even hear that it will destroy your bhakti and we'll still do it. And we'll think, no, that devotee is bad, therefore it's not aparadha. We're just talking about the truth. It's not aparadha. We talked about this last night in class. I'll repeat it because most of you weren't there. As human beings, we have mechanisms that are self-deceptive, so that we do something and we don't admit that we're actually doing it. And here's one really good self-deceptive example. So we see Dagoranga, yeah, he's just a fake, because he does this and that, right? So once I state my story, my imaginary story about Dayal Gauranga, this and that, then I can criticize him, and there's nothing wrong with it because I'm just stating what is, that he's this and that, which is just made up in my head that he's this and that. But because I make it up in my head, I convince myself that it's true, and then I'm justified in criticizing him. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. Have you ever done that before? In other words, I can't criticize you unless I can make up a story about you, and then I can criticize you, and all I'm doing is telling the world what you're actually like. So I'm not criticizing you. Because you were bad. You're a bad girl. That's my story. You may have done this without realizing it. Oh, he's this, he's that, he's this. And so you've justified drinking the poison in the name of making up a story about someone. Now it's justifiable because I'm just a journalist reporting the facts. Then you might say, wait a minute, but if criticizing a Vaishnava is like poison, but I criticize, you've criticized, and there's some really big criticizers, practically that's their occupation. That's what they do all day. They sit on Facebook and just like shoot arrows at people. And you say, but why haven't they fallen down? You ever thought like that? You know anybody on the internet who's a huge offender? You know many, right? I like the ones that they don't even know you and they're telling you about your whole life. You know, you do this, you do that, you know, you have this, you take money here, you've got big bank accounts. And I'm reading this like, oh, I wish I did. You know. And then you think, how can these people be so offensive and not fall down? The answer is, a Vaishnava doesn't criticize. So if one is committing offense, that means they've already fallen down. It just looks, you know, they're chanting Hare Krishna. It looks like they're devotees. They have tilak. And they're on the internet offending everyone. That's proof that they've fallen down, that that's what they do, is offend. Because someone who offends all day is fallen down. Right? Isn't that interesting? It just looks like they haven't fallen down. But that's the sign of being fallen. So sometimes it's kind of confusing. So they've drank the poison, and the poison is acting. And then we have this story in Chaitanya Charitamrita of this Ramachandra Puri. And you could say, in a sense, his profession was fault finding. That's what he did. You know the story. He induces the sannyasis to eat too much, and then he goes on Facebook and says, so-and-so Maharaj eats too much. He forces them to eat too much, and then so-and-so Maharaj eats too much. So he's like the personification of a critic, of a very tamasic nature. And Prabhupada says, it's very interesting, he says in a purport that Ramachandra Puri was situated in criticism. It was like his constitutional position, his bhav, his sthai bhav. Atma bhuta, dosha bhuta, dosha darshana bhuta, his constitutional position is to see fault, and that's what he was relishing. So he was situated in criticism. Now, I was in a lecture and Prabhupada said, if you're envious, if you're jealous, you're in the material world. Bhaktisiddhanta said, devotees don't criticize. This is so interesting. How many of you think you're a devotee? Raise your hand. You probably thought you were a devotee before I said that.
Become devotees.
So we want to become devotees, and devotees don't criticize. So what I would say to you as a starting point, to be very self-reflective, that even if you see a fault, even if you see reason to criticize, if you criticize, stop and think, what is actually going on here? Because Bhaktisiddhanta said, the illusion of Maya is that you see a fault and you think you have a right to criticize because a person has a fault. He said, no, that's fault finding. Fault finding doesn't mean there's no fault and you find it. That is one definition. And that happens a lot. There's no fault in you say, God, this person's such an offender, he's making up stories. But Bhaktisiddhanta says fault finding also means there is a fault and you're talking about it. And we think, no, well, it's a fault. So it's okay to talk about it because it's real. He said no. And so the reflection is, when I find fault, I'm supposed to think, rather than what that says about the person, what does it say about me? Because everyone's seeing Daya Gauranga, and some people are praising him, that he's amazing. He's such a wonderful devotee. He does a Kirtan Academy for so many years. He's so attached to holy name. He's so handsome. He's so intelligent. And other people are thinking, no, he's this, he's that, he's this, he's that. So what does that say about us? That's what we need to be thinking. Okay, Prabhupada said, everybody has faults. He said to one of his disciples, he said, even I have faults, and you can find fault with me, and I can find fault with you, but what's the point? So this is where we need to turn things around, because we're always looking outside ourselves and seeing a fault rather than looking inside ourselves and asking how I can improve. So when we fault find, we should immediately it should click in our head. Well, what's happening? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my consciousness this week or this moment, this day, that I need to do this? That should be the reflection. Because it actually has no place in Vaishnavism. It's not supposed to exist. Paramo nirmatsaranam satam. The Vaishnavas are not envious. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, a Vaishnava does not criticize. And then he said something amazing. He said, and a guru has to criticize. That's the duty of the guru and the parent. Chandaka Pandit says, you'll spoil a disciple, you'll just spoil a child if you don't criticize. And so the guru has to criticize, and then Bhaktisiddhanta says, Vaishnavas don't criticize. So now you have a conundrum. You know what conundrum means? Dilemma, oxymoron, a paradox. And you know what his conclusion was? Amazing. He said, therefore, no Vaishnava can become a guru. You can't, because Vaishnavas don't criticize. And very funny story, he had a disciple, and the disciple was criticizing. And you may have heard that Prabhupada said being a guru is a thankless task. Thankless task, well, for many reasons, but he was specifically saying it's a thankless task because you have to criticize. And so no Vaishnava wants to criticize. Which is also an interesting statement. If I'm criticizing, what does that make me? If no Vaishnava wants to criticize. So this disciple was criticizing. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said something which I think it's kind of funny. I don't know if he intended it. But he said, I am the spiritual master. I have to criticize. I don't want to, but I have to. It's my seva. It's the thankless task. And you are not guru, and you don't have to criticize, and you're doing it. It's like, once I had a godbrother, he was a sannyasi, and he was preaching in Poland, and in Poland, there's an abundance of amber and silver. So, to support his preaching, he was bringing over amber, silver jewelry and selling it in America. And one time he told me, he said, I don't really need the money. I just have the jewelry. I'm selling it. And at that time, I actually had a business selling jewelry. And I was thinking, Maharaj, I hate this business. I hate doing it, but I have to because I have to support a family. And you don't have to. Why would you do it? It's like, doesn't make any sense to me. And so when I read that thing of Bhaktisiddhanta, it was the exact same thing. I have to criticize disciples. You don't have to. Why would you do that? It's the last thing a Vaishnava wants to do. So I think it's really important for us to reflect on this statement that a Vaishnava doesn't criticize. Every time we criticize, we stop and think, okay, what am I right now? Now, there's another point, and this is a general point that applies to many bad things we do. What mode of nature do you think criticism is in?
Passion.
Ignorance.
Raise your hand for passion. Passion. Raise your hand for ignorance. Raise your hand for the fourth mode of nature. I used to joke, I said, you know, there's 3 modes and the 4th mode is wrath. There's a new mode created, but you know, and there are different levels of modes of nature. So you can be like higher ignorance or lower ignorance, but there may be some passion, but it's mostly ignorance. Anger is ignorance. There's a lot of criticism comes from anger also, frustration. So here's the problem, and this is very important for everything in our life. There are things that we do, knowingly or unknowingly, that are activities in the mode of ignorance. Either we're impelled by the mode of ignorance to do it, or we push ourselves into allow ourselves to go down into the mode of ignorance, which then impels us to do it. What's the problem with the mode of ignorance? The mode of ignorance is very far from Krishna, right? If you want to get far from Krishna, I can show you how to do it. Sleep a lot, eat a lot, smoke a lot of pot, hang around, listen to rock and roll, stay on Facebook all day. Yeah, that's the mode of ignorance. Don't work, don't bathe, don't clean your house. Okay, now we can understand, oh my God, if I was living in a dirty house, disorganized, wearing the same clothes every day, as we did as hippies, we only changed our clothes once a week. As I remember. On a good week. So, clean your room. Like, why would you do that? It's like too much trouble. You just throw everything on the floor, you know, and then once a month you gather it and wash it. And then take it back from the laundry and throw it on the floor. So if I describe that, then you'd think, well, how could you be Krishna conscious living like that? It makes perfect sense, right? You need to be clean, organized, regulated, no drugs. But we don't realize that things like resentment, anger, hatred, criticism, blasphemy, it's all tamasic. It's all that same mode. And it all has that same effect of pulling us away from Krishna. And I don't think we understand this well enough, that how important it is to be sattvic in our life. Because when you're, and then the next week you say, oh Prabhu, having a really hard time chanting my rounds. Yeah, you like criticized everyone in ISKCON. What do you expect? Expect some good job next week? You know, it's put you in tamagun completely. And you know, I'm trying to chant, it's just like I have no taste, I'm bored, I don't feel like it. Yes, because when you live in tamagun, that's what happens. You don't feel like it. Does that make sense? So this is really important to understand. Like to get this from here, get it in here, and down to here, so we understand this is what's happening every time I say, oh, that Prabhu, he's so this, he's so that. Every time I say that, straight down, direct, non-stop flight to the mode of ignorance. And if you don't believe me, I can give you an exercise. Tonight, before you go to bed, find 3 devotees and criticize them. They don't have to be in front of you. They don't have to be in front of you. Just, think of 3 people you don't like and just tell somebody how awful they are. And I can guarantee you, tomorrow morning, you will have some really bad rounds. If you just want to prove, you need proof for what I'm saying. I don't really think the mode of ignorance is that bad. It really affects my japa. Well, do the exercise. And I've done the exercise, not intentionally, but I've done it unintentionally, so I'm reporting the result. I was criticized, this devotee was bothering me. I don't know what he was doing, but he had some view which I thought was really bad, and I didn't like it. And before I went to bed, I was criticizing him in my mind. The next morning, worst rounds ever. I'm only kidding. Don't experiment. I've already done the experiment for you. It definitely works. So, as a general principle, we're trying to live in the mode of goodness. We want a life in the mode of goodness. So every time you hold on to resentment, every time you say something nasty, every time you get angry, every time this, every time that, straight down into ignorance. And then you're trying to do bhakti. And then it's impediment. Right? Oh, Prabhu, I'm so this, I'm so that. Yeah, well, what mode is this, that, so this or that in? It's either in passion or ignorance. If you're in sattva, you wouldn't be moded out, so to speak. How are you doing, Prabhu? Well, I'm in the modes today. You know, in English we say I'm under the weather. In ISKCON we say I'm in the modes. Sometimes if it's bad, I'm under the modes. I'm like right on the bottom, you know. The bottom of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. I'm under the modes, Prabhu. Yeah. So, but when your life is more sattvic or more transcendental, that's when everything goes well. You know, where is the greed? Where is the envy? Where is the lust? Where is the anger? Where is the resentment? What mode is that in? It's not in sattva. So sattva is actually the cure for all those problems. Did you know that? And all those problems are generated by passion and ignorance. So sometimes we're trying to fight those problems, but we're not trying to get out of passion and ignorance. We're staying in passion and ignorance, and that's why we lose the battle. So hard to control. I'm so addicted. I can't stop complaining. I can't stop this. I'm always thinking about money. I'm always thinking about sex. Yeah, because you're in passion and ignorance. That's what happens in those modes. You have to get out of those modes. You get sattva guna. Oh, I came to Mayapur. I just feel everything's different. I don't feel like I used to. I was in Mauritius, and this devotee came from South Africa, maybe Johannesburg. And Mauritius is it's like an island, which is basically like a big boat in the ocean, because you could almost see the ocean from everywhere. And as soon as he came, he said, "Oh, I feel so peaceful. I'm not agitated." Yeah, because it's a very sattvic environment. So that's the symptom of sattva. So the point is that when you're inclined to be critical, then immediately reflect and say, okay, the mode of ignorance is predominating my consciousness. Why is it predominating? Is it my lifestyle that is ignorant, or have I propelled myself into ignorance by my mentality? We should think that way. And we should not think what's wrong with the person. We should think what's wrong with me, that I need to point out the faults of another person. And why. And we'll discuss why in the coming days. But I want to establish a foundation right now. This is very important. And the reason I'm taking so much time is based on what I said originally, was that I've talked about this and I've seen it for 50 years. And only when a Vaishnava becomes humble do you see that he stops criticizing. There are devotees, you may know them, very humble devotees. You could not pay them $1 million to criticize a devotee. It'll never come out of their mouth, ever. Ever. And if you praise them, they'll just simply they'll never, like when you praise somebody and they're faking it, like they don't like it, but you can see they really like it. No problem. It's not really me. But the humble devotee, when you praise them, it's just like you see, it deflects. It's like they don't believe it. They don't want to believe it. They don't need it. That's the kind of devotee that's not criticizing. Those devotees don't criticize. But if there's pride in our heart, then we criticize. And therefore, we have to think that way. When I criticize, it's due to pride. It's not due to, oh, this devotee is so bad, they deserve to be criticized. I have to tell the whole world about that. Yeah, okay. This devotee is bad. And that energy you put into criticizing them, you could have put that energy into improving yourself. So what's the value? You're going to save ISKCON from them? Okay, if they're, a serial killer, a serial rapist, yeah, of course. You have to save ISKCON from them. But if they eat too much, you want to broadcast that on Facebook? Oh, so-and-so Maharaj, such a pig. How can you have faith in ISKCON? Sannyasis, they eat like pigs. I mean, you think it's funny. People say these things. Isn't it? They do. Why'd you leave ISKCON? Oh, the sannyasis, they're all pigs. Yeah, I'm not exaggerating. People say these things. Yes? Don't go on Facebook to find it. But. There's another thing. As detrimental as it is to speak criticism, it's equally detrimental to be an innocent bystander, someone who's listening to it. If you allow yourself to listen to it, you're implicated in the offense. You either have to defend that devotee or go away and just say, please stop, I can't listen to this. I don't know this devotee, I don't care, I can't listen to this. Or just don't say anything and leave. If you don't do that, I can guarantee you will be infected. Guarantee you. Even if that's not your intention. Yes?
What to do then if it's a husband and wife, for example?
Husband and wife are immune. Oh, how old are you?
The wife can't.
What's your age? You were born a prostate?
Yeah, almost.
Yeah. Well,
not me. I'm just saying there's a lot of people here.
I think that's another topic for a workshop on marriage. But in any relationship, if the person's doing something that's detrimental for your physical, emotional, spiritual health, obviously that has to be discussed. So, this is what you're doing is hurting me. Yes.
So husband and wife is another category. It's not Vaisnava Aparadha.
It's husband-wife
No,
Aparadha.
then see if the wife's listening or the husband's listening, and then they can't go in, because they're married.
Yeah, but there has to be, if you're going to be married and not go crazy, there has to be communication. Because there's affection. See, criticism is devoid of affection and it's devoid of benefit. So if there's benefit in the criticism, there's like I have affection for you and I see you, you're chanting your shnik shnik ram ram, and I go, Varanga, I just recorded this, listen to this. You're like, oh my God, thank you so much. I didn't know I was chanting that way. There's affection. So that's just trying to help. And sometimes in that close relationship, we get a little upset. But the basic relationship is affection. So if that weren't true, every Grihastha would have left ISKCON due to Vaisnava Aparadha. Because spouses make big offenses sometimes. But they don't mean it. They apologize. Well, sometimes they mean it, but they usually end up divorced, so that solves the problem. But they generally don't mean it. So I don't know of anything in Shastra about spouse aparadha and the effects, but that's just my experience. Seeing that it's temporary. The affection is still there. It's also how to be able to fulfill one's needs and so forth. So, but a lot of criticism is vicious. It's meant to destroy somebody. So, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, if you criticize and you can help the person, it's allowed. So you're doing something, and I come up to you and I say something that's critical. What the intention is to help you, and you respect me and you're willing to listen, and it's not criticism. It comes out as criticism, but actually it's help. Or you're doing something and it's hurting him, and then I have to make some complaint. But that's out of service to him, so the motive is different, or to protect the devotees.
So can we say when you come and you maintain respect and affection, then it can be constructed. Even if person takes offense, at least you was not coming with a vicious, envious mentality.
Yeah, that's true. But I would also say, but you should be smart enough to know whether they're going to take it or not. Because the problem is your intent wasn't to harm them, but the result was they got offended. And so that's bad. You lose points.
What I'm saying, this is, if at all, better nothing. But if at all, I'm going back to husband, wife.
Yeah, okay.
So you cannot be devoid of respect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So even if you need to correct one another, you need to do it with respect.
But you see, there's a difference between complaining and criticizing. Because criticizing is, you're criticizing the character of a person. But complaining is like you did an action, like you left a banana peel on the floor and I slipped and almost killed myself. So could you when you're throwing your banana peels in the trash, can you make sure you get it in the trash? And so that's a complaint. It's not, the criticism would be, you're so irresponsible, don't you know, banana peels on the floor are dangerous, don't you have a brain, you're so lazy, you never do anything right. That's criticism.
Which is a typical situation.
Typical wife from some countries, maybe, I don't know. Hopefully not. But sometimes it does happen. But that's a criticism. That's criticizing the character of the person rather than, we may see things in ISKCON and we're upset about them because we see how it's ill-affecting people. So, I wish the leaders were more personal, or I wish there was more care for devotees, and sometimes I just see that leaders are, they're more concerned about results than the welfare of the devotees. So I'm not saying the leader's bad, I'm just saying I wish there would be more care. That's a complaint.
When you say they are concerned more about results, you're speaking about their intentions, but you cannot know. You can describe the facts, but actually describing somebody's intentions is already a guesswork, more or less.
It can be, but I think in this case it could be based on personal experience. In my dealings with this person, they never asked me how I'm doing. And they always worked me, and I told them I'm not finishing my rounds, and they just said, well, you have to do this anyway. I can't say what their intention is, but I can say this is
behavior. You can decide
this is what happened. Yeah. So I can complain about that and say I don't think that's good for a leader, and I don't think that's good for him. But I'm not that's different than criticizing him. Saying he's so bad, he's so inconsiderate, he's so unkind, he has no compassion. Then you're getting to the realm of Vaisnava Aparadha, and then you're also making assumptions, and a lot of those assumptions are based on what you need. And maybe she doesn't think there's anything wrong with him, but I think there's something wrong with him. And so we always have to reflect on, well, is it that I have needs that she doesn't have, and therefore I'm condemning a person because he didn't fulfill my needs. And it's only because I have those needs that I have those expectations, and that's why I condemn him. So that's a whole other topic. But a lot of times we don't realize that we have expectations for people, and when they don't meet those expectations, then we criticize them. Although those expectations are coming from us. There are needs, and there is no contract. I have an expectation for you, but I never told you what the expectation was. I expect I'm coming here, there should be a feast for me, foot bathing, Guru Puja, I'm never coming back to Kirtan Academy because that didn't happen. But I never told you. That's a big austerity to have your foot bathing. But I never told him what I expected. And so now I'm getting upset because these were expectations. I'm a big guru, don't you know who I am? I don't come to homes unless they bathe my feet. You should know that. Where's that coming from? It's coming from my false prestige. Right? Plus, I never told you. So when you're expecting something from somebody, unless it's just common sense, like we're supposed to meet at this time, or I loaned you this money and you didn't give it back. But if it's not contractual, not common sense that we agreed on, then when you're expecting something from somebody and they don't come through, oftentimes it's your own need. It has nothing to do with them. They didn't do anything wrong. You know? It's like we, yes?
I did not want to change the subject matter, but can I ask something?
1 second, because I'm on a train of thought. Like when there was a course, I forget what it was called, it was a leadership course or something, and when you become a guru, you go into that course, you do a training. And so Bhakti Mark Swami was there. And everyone else who was there was either becoming a guru, on the list to be a guru, a new guru, and a few people who were gurus for a while, and it was just a GBC thing that you'd take this course. So Bhakti Mark Swami was sharing his experience of being a guru, and he was telling us, he said the most, not maybe the most important thing, but one very important thing is that disciples need to understand what they can expect and what they can't expect from their guru, because a lot of disappointment is based on expectation. So you take a guru, and you're expecting all these things, you never told him what you expected, he never told you that's what he's going to do, and then when he doesn't do it, you get let down, and these just going gurus, they don't even care, they just look at me anytime, and I serve them, and I do so much, and they won't even reply to my emails. Well, wait a minute, how many disciples does he have? Oh, 7,000. You expect he's going to reply to your email, so that's like, what is it, like 7,000. If every disciple wrote one email a year, how many emails would he get a day?
200.
Yeah. 200. And how long does it take to answer 200 emails? Like your whole day, basically. So I have a guru who does nothing but answer emails. And if he takes a day off, then he's got 400 the next day. And so sometimes it's just common sense. Like you should have understood. You shouldn't. It was your fault that you expected it, and you never asked him. And maybe the guru said, "No, just write me. I'll always answer." And then he doesn't, and then you can ask him, say, "Guru Maharaj, you said you would answer." He said, "I'm sorry, but I thought I could, but I can't." So you set yourself up for disappointment when you expect something that you haven't. There's no agreement. It was just, this is what I think a guru is supposed to do, or a husband's supposed to do, or a wife's supposed to do, or a teacher at the Kirtan Academy is supposed to do, or whatever. You have all your ideas. And there's a book written by, I think he's a Mexican or South American, called The Four Agreements. And he's saying, these are agreements you need to make with yourself to make your life easier. And one of the agreements is don't make assumptions. Because as soon as you make assumptions, you're guessing about what is going to happen. And there's no agreement yet. And we all make assumptions all the time, right? Isn't it? When you came to Mayapur, you already had assumptions. How you get picked up, what the prasadam is going to be like, isn't it? If you've never been here before, anywhere you've never been, you make assumptions. So you have to be careful. And so if I make assumptions about how you should behave and you don't behave that way, even though you didn't do anything wrong, I will tend to criticize you. So whose fault is that? Hello, whose fault is that? Is it theirs or is it yours? And we really, really need to get this, and we really, really need to understand this is a sign of humility. This is what humility means. So every time we criticize, then the light should go off in our head. Pride, 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 I'm proud, I'm arrogant, I think I have a right to judge people. Okay. It's your turn.
Okay. Once I heard a lecture and it was enlightened for me. It was also about criticism, and the lecturer was saying we have to learn it here to make it there. Yeah. And the idea was that every step is a dance and every word is a song, and we have to be very aesthetic in our dealings. And if this is the reason why Krishna don't like that we criticize the devotees, because there is no criticism. No?
Yeah.
And now on the other hand, Jatila is criticizing Radharani. Should I think that this is only a play, or it's only a game, or maybe I would like that you say something about this.
Well, the first point is, it's a very interesting point. There's a language of the material world and there's a language of the spiritual world. And what's the language of the material world? It's Gramya Katha. And what is Gramya Katha? Oh, did you hear what so-and-so did? No, tell me, what did they do? He went out and cheated on his wife. And they went to South America. And really, where? What did they do? You know? That kind of katha is called village talk. That's the language of this world. And if you speak that language, guess where you take birth in your next life? 3 guesses. If you speak the language of this world, you take birth in this world. That's just how it is. This is the criticism, envy, resentment, anger, hatred. It's the language of this world. You speak it, this is where you take birth. What is the language of the spiritual world? Praise, honor, affection, appreciation. You speak that language, now you're speaking the language of that world. You can enter that world when you speak that language. Of course, there are other things you have to do, but that's part of it. So as far as Jatila, esoteric. Okay, we'll get esoteric for a minute.
It's not only Jatila, it's,
demons.
There's a lot of
Jatila, the demons, anything apparently opposing Krishna. So, Yogamaya enacts the pastimes of Krishna. And every day Yogamaya meets, I think, with Vrinda Devi and Vrinda Kun, and Yogamaya, Vrinda Devi, Bhakti Devi. They have a meeting to plan out the day's activities. And so, sometimes in order to satisfy Krishna's need and desire for love and affection, exchange of love and affection, they have to create some obstacle. For example, in a good movie, are there obstacles? The heroine or the hero, there are obstacles to getting what they want. If there's no obstacles, it's a boring movie, isn't it? And sometimes I joke. Here's the movie. It starts in the home of one Indian family who has a daughter, and they're sitting around saying, you know, Anand Patel, he's a very nice boy, and I think he'd be very good husband for you. And she's showing the picture. Oh, he's very handsome. Oh, what does he do? Oh, he's CEO of a big company. Oh, he's very rich. Oh, very nice. And so Anand Patel comes over and big muscles. He's got blue eyes and he's Indian. Oh my God. And she's looking at him. And he's looking at her. And the parents are talking. And then the parents decide, very good. We'll talk. And then they call up and the next day they both think, I think it's a very good marriage. When the engagement, when the wedding, and they make the plan. And the next scene is a wedding, and then it's over. What a boring movie. Well, if you really, no, you can make it more boring. Then they get married, and they have kids, and, she's cleaning the house with the baby. Yeah, it's really boring.
talking like this is funny.
Yeah, you can make it funny. But if that were the movie, you'd fall asleep in the middle of the movie, because you know exactly what's going to happen. And everybody's doing that. And why go to a movie to watch what everybody's doing? But you go and the girls, Anand and the girl are there, but the girl falls in love with a Muslim, and she's supposed to go to the wedding, but she runs off with a Muslim, and the whole family's with. That's interesting. And they're pulling her back, and they're, chasing her in the car, and she's running off from the wedding, and, that's a good movie, right? And then the whole thing is just one obstacle after another, and whether they're going to get to stay together or whether she's going to have to marry this abusive Hindu macho man who just wants to make his wife a slave, or this Muslim husband who's just like so kind-hearted and you want her to marry him even though he's Muslim. This is okay. Got to be liberal and open and like that. And finally they capture her and she has to go on the wedding and you're crying and this is horrible. And then, but somehow or other she escapes after the wedding, like 3 days later on their honeymoon, and she runs in the airport and gets on a plane and she meets the guy, and then they finally meet and the movie ends. It's like, oh, you're so happy. Right? So Krishna Leela is like that. Krishna does things because when there's obstacles, it's sweeter. Because now it's harder to meet Radharani, so it makes it sweeter when you meet. Isn't it? The harder it is to meet, the sweeter it is. So Yogamaya arranges that. So the enemies are not really enemies, they're just enemies in disguise. Just like it is said that there were gopis who weren't pure yet. They were just coming into Krishna Leela, Bhoma Leela on this earth. They were just liberated, sadhana siddhas, in bhava, coming into Krishna Leela, and their rasa was as a gopi. And Krishna plays his flute, the fifth note, whatever that fifth note is. And then you go completely crazy, and he's calling everyone for the rasa dance. But those gopis couldn't go. And it is said that their husbands prevented them from going. Right? Isn't it? And you're thinking, those rascal husbands! How could they do this? They're gopis. No. There's no rascal husbands in Krishna Leela. They're all devotees. Why did the husbands prevent them? Because they weren't qualified to go. That's why. So Yogamaya has to put so-called husband in the way of the gopis to prevent them from going to Krishna Leela because they weren't qualified. And what happened when they were prevented? That every ounce of contamination that were, not every ounce, yeah, it was only a few ounces left of contamination that was left in them was burned up because they couldn't go. And they were thinking of Krishna, I want to go, I want to go. They're hearing the flute, they're going crazy. So because their husbands stopped them, it caused them to burn the last traces of their material attachment. So their husbands are devotees, they're engaged by Yogamaya. The obstacle helps. So the only obstacle in Krishna Leela is what's going to help. That's all. Simple, right? And the only obstacle in our Leela is us. The only thing between us and Krishna is us. There's nothing else in the way. It's just no, she's the problem. No, she's not the problem. You're the problem. You are the problem, you were the problem, you always were the problem. She may disturb you and she may do this and that, but ultimately she's not the problem. Yes?
Also, I think in addition to that, once we cannot completely compare what's going on in the spiritual world, what's going on in the material world.
Of course.
I mean, the gopis really fight with one another. They have Vipakshas, Radharani, Chandravali. They really get at one another. But the point is that if we start saying, okay, this is what's going to happen, then say, okay, Krishna's dancing with somebody else's wives, and if you go to the morality of spiritual world, it's a baffling point. It's all spiritual, everything done for the pleasure of Krishna and not to be imitated. It's not our path to follow their behavior of perfected beings, but we follow the path of sadhana, and then we follow the anukula bhakti.
Yes. But it's nice to meditate on what goes on there, because you have to do that down here to get there. You have to practice here so you can get there. Like, if you're going to box, if you're going to go in the ring, you better practice.
So how do you do that?
Yeah. Hare Krishna. How do you do it? You stop criticizing devotees. You stop offending devotees. That's a good place to start. And you're always talking about Krishna. When we were young devotees, we were being exploited. We worked so hard. You know, we worked so hard and slept so little that I think the average time it took us to fall asleep was under 10 seconds. And there used to be a saying, they said, Prabhupada said this, he said, you work so hard all day for Krishna that as soon as you lay down, that's like 1, 2, 3, you're gone. Of course, in those days we slept so little, as soon as we sat down, 1, 2, 3. Definitely. I mean, seriously, everybody. So, this is a very good point. So we have to practice living in this world the way they live there, otherwise you have to stay here. So, when you become Krishna conscious, you carry with you a suitcase, and in that suitcase there's all this stuff that is blocking you from going to Krishna Loka. So the process of bhakti is either getting rid of the stuff or purifying the stuff. Because if you go with this suitcase back to Godhead, when you go through the security check, it's going to go ding, 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 ding. And it's going to show up lust, greed. You've got lust, greed, envy. I'm sorry, you can't go. Gramya kata. Sorry, you can't go. So that's the idea. Of course, Krishna's merciful. We're not perfect. But that's a general idea. These are not the things that are allowed there. You can't carry those things. If that's what you want, this is where you stay, and you'll get another body to execute it. So you want to criticize? You can't do it there. You gotta stay here to do it, so you'll take birth here. Simple, right? This is the place to do it. You want to criticize? You are in the perfect place. No one's going to stop you here. But you want to do it there? Get out. Boom, you can't stay here. Right? So this criticism is the language of the material world, and glorification is the language of the spiritual world. When Mahaprabhu met Sanatana Goswami, and Sanatana Goswami at that time had a disease on his skin, and so there's all these sores, and like all this pus. And Mahaprabhu embraced him, and Sanatana Goswami, he felt like, my life is ruined now. Because anything which is inside your body is contaminated. And that's why if you're cooking or on the altar and you sneeze, you go wash your hands. Anything that comes from the inside, that's why women who are menstruating, they can't go on the altar, they can't cook. Anything coming from the inside contaminates the body. So he has all these sores. And Mahaprabhu embraces him and he thinks, okay, that's it. It's time for suicide. My life is ruined. And Mahaprabhu said, no. And he quoted a verse. He said, to see a devotee is the perfection of the eyes. To touch a devotee is the perfection of touch. And to glorify a devotee is the perfection of speech. If glorifying a devotee is the perfection of speech, what is criticizing devotee? What is it? How do we say that?
Perfection of hell.
One-way ticket to hell. Well, not a one-way ticket. Free ticket. Yeah. If it's the perfection of the tongue, then criticizing the devotee is the total misuse of the tongue. Yeah. It's like Krishna gives us a body, gives us eyes, ears, nose, tongue, everything. And it's like you can use it to go back to Godhead, or you can use it to completely destroy yourself. Right? Same tongue, same nose, same right? The tongue, anavriti sabdat. By sound, you go back to Godhead, and by sound, you stay in the material world. So, criticism is the language of the material world. And if you're criticizing, you're in the material world. You may be in Vrindavan, you may be in Mayapur, you may be wearing dhoti, sari, tilak, kanti, mala. But if this is coming out of your mouth, it's just, you're in the material world. You are right there, grounded in it. Totally. That's the understanding. And if you're glorifying the devotee, you're in the spiritual world. Prabhupada said that. I was there in the lecture, Los Angeles, 1972 or 75. If you are not envious, if you're not jealous, you're in the spiritual world. If you're envious or jealous, you live in the material world. Simple, right? That's it. What do you think? I'm trying to shake you up because this topic is difficult. And if I don't shake you up, I was just like, yeah, I heard that before. Yeah, that's the problem. You heard it before and nothing happened. Or not enough happened, right? So if after these 4 or 5 days I could get it through you that every time I criticize, I'm in the material world, every time I criticize, it's my problem, then I'll be very happy that you got that, because then something's bound to change. And if you understand that the glorification and appreciation of the devotee is a sign of your humility, and it's natural. If you're humble, it's just natural. You don't have to fake it. And the criticism of the devotee is a sign of your pride or your lack of self-esteem, and you're compensating. You compensate for lack of self-esteem by pulling people down to make yourself feel good. Or it's your expectation, your assumptions that are not being met. Or we'll talk about other things. You have any questions? Yes, you have?
Yes. If you can recognize in the moment that you have jealous and envy like to this person,
yes,
exactly this moment, how to deal with it? Just breathe. I don't know how
what to do,
let
how to
it go.
do.
Just
Yeah.
how to.
Well,
become
I have an amazing thing that Prabhupada said that can help you. And actually, what Prabhupada said, I heard it in a different way by a non-devotee. And I'll tell you what the non-devotee said first. This was well, he's kind of a Buddhist guy, but he was teaching a workshop on how to develop the mindset to become wealthy. He said, because you won't become wealthy if you don't have a wealthy mindset. So he said, when people don't have money and they see wealthy people, they don't like those wealthy people. Right? It's like, because it makes you realize what a failure you are. This guy's got the Gucci suit and the Rolex watch, driving up in his Mercedes, with this beautiful woman with diamond rings. And you look at yourself and you just think, I'm a loser. And that guy is making you feel like a loser. It's not his fault. And so you don't like him. I hate that guy. I hate rich people. They're so this and that. So what this teacher said, he said, no. He said, when you see that person, you should go up to them and say, thank you, you're an inspiration. He said, you should be inspired by the people who have what you want. You shouldn't be envious. And he explained, he said, because anything you're envious towards is a negative. So if you want to achieve something, you can't be negative towards what you want to achieve. You have to be positive about it. So let's say I want something. Let's say you're a great musician, and I want to be a great musician. And so you're playing your flute, and I want to play the flute, but I can't play like you. As Prabhupada said, transcendental envy is like, wow, I'd like to play like you so I could play and please Krishna. And material envy is, I don't like you because you play the flute so well. So much better than I do. I'm envious of you. I don't want you to do that because it makes me feel like I'm not a good flute player. But the right attitude is, oh, you're so great, you're an inspiration. So Prabhupada said the same thing. He said something exactly like this. He said, if I'm envious of someone, indirectly, it's a glorification because I respect the person I'm envious of because they have what I want. I wouldn't be envious of someone who has what I don't want. And I can prove that to you. Raise your hand if you're envious of street sweepers. Anybody here envious of street sweepers? Anyone here envious of
They're so simple. I'm envious of them. They have no needs.
Okay, we're going to give her a broom tomorrow. Envious of garbage collector. No, we're not envious of people. Okay, she's envious of them because they're humble. She wants to be humble. All right, but it still proves my point. We're envious of the person who has what we want. So Prabhupada said, you should recognize that envy is actually just a kind of perversion of respect, because you only respect people who have what you want. You only be envious of people who have what you want. You're not envious of people who don't have what you want. Why would you be? So then Prabhupada said the same thing. You should serve them. You should honor them. because that creates a positive relationship with what you want. So whenever I hear about the success of a devotee, or whenever I see about the call of a devotees, or I observe their skills in an area which I would like to be successful, I always try to be as happy as I can. I go, that's fantastic, that's great. Because that creates something positive towards the thing I would like. But if I'm envious, it creates a negative. Now I have a negative towards the thing I want. So I'm defeating myself. So, to put it all in a nutshell, practice. You practice, you do the actions of a non-envious person. And that will help you. So whenever you're feeling something or acting out something, try to act out in a way that would be the opposite of the way you don't want to act. So you're feeling very angry towards someone, try to be nice. Bake them a cake. Do the opposite, it counteracts it. Do counteracting activity. Because, let's say I'm angry or envious, I may not be able to change that feeling. So Mahatma Prabhu said I should respect them, and it's actually this and that. And I go, yeah, but I feel envious. Okay, you feel envious, do some seva to honor them. And that will change how you feel. Because sometimes you can't change how you feel just by sitting there, figuring out, I know I shouldn't be envious, it's really bad, I'm a bad person, I'm a bad devotee. I know Prabhupada's not happy. You're going like this, nothing changes because you feel. So you have to do something that would change how you feel. And by serving or glorifying that person, it'll change how you feel. You can try it. So there's many things you can do to change how you feel towards somebody else. See the good in the person. Right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's what we should do. Because we may not be able to alter the envy because it's deeply rooted, but we can alter the emotion by changing the action. Then the next question is, what if I don't feel like it? Then suffer. It's your choice, you can suffer. You say, yeah, but when I get emotional, this and that. Yeah, well, practice, work on it. Control yourself. Don't let your emotions push you around. Do something. It's like you want to go this way, and your emotions are going this way. So don't allow them to take you down. Be smart enough to act in a way that will bring you up. Sometimes you can't change the way you feel, you can't change the way you think, but you can change the way you act. It's like, I'm tired. What do I do? So I just force myself to stand up and I jump around, get some cold water, splash it on my face. But if I sit there and go, don't be tired. You shouldn't be tired. You had enough sleep last night. Why are you tired? Tired is the mode of ignorance. No, I have to just do something. So sometimes I do it, okay, I do a headstand, all the blood goes to my head, okay, now I feel good, take my vitamins, whatever. So now I'm not tired. I had to do something, or go for a...
Thank you.
Yeah, is that okay? Anything else? Yes.
What if you're forced to stay with a person who always blasphemes others?
You're forced. You have no choice.
Okay, for example, yeah, you have no choice.
Why? Tell me why you have no choice.
Well, for example, they're your family members.
Like mother, father, husband? Which one? I need specific.
Just generally.
You don't want to incriminate yourself. Yeah. Generally, you would express how that criticism makes you feel. You would tell the person, like, when you're saying bad things about a devotee, it really makes me feel like this, or it hurts my spiritual life. And I really appreciate it that you didn't do that.
But they're not willing to change.
You might have to find a new family. No. But if you are going to advance in Krishna consciousness, you can't be around people who criticize devotees. Especially if that devotee is your spiritual master, then it will destroy you. Definitely destroy you. Or an advanced devotee. You know, I have this experience, it's so funny and it's so stupid. It's like someone wants to take someone as their guru and then they decide later, well, I'll take someone else as my guru. So then that other one that was going to be their guru, it's just like, okay, see you later. And everything they say is like, whatever, I don't have to listen to you. That's like, that happens. Very immature. You're irrelevant now because I've appointed you not as my guru. So whatever you say now, that's you. So we have to respect all senior Vaishnavas. And if we're living with someone who disrespects them, it's going to harm us. And you may end up disrespecting them also. Because hearing blasphemy destroys faith.
They don't criticize like senior Vaishnavas, just other Vaishnavas.
Yeah. Well, then tell them. Tell them what you heard today. Print out a little ticket and say, this is your return ticket to the material world. Payment, criticism.
And search for someone who can adopt you. Oh no.
If we have to learn how to communicate in a way that people will listen and people will understand that we have boundaries that need to be respected.
So basically, it is really.
Is that a
hard.
family member here in the audience? Sometimes
No, I
people
was
ask.
just speaking generally.
Sometimes people say, you know, my husband this and that, and he does this and that, and then I find out he's sitting right over there. I'm going, that stupid idiot, how could he do that? He's right over there. Yeah, we have to learn how to communicate what we need in a way that doesn't offend them, doesn't put them on the defensive. It helps them understand your need. Yes.
Thank you very much. So basically, I understand that it is a lot of work to actually stop criticizing everyone.
Yes.
And it's not
But-
going to go away so easily.
It's a negative self-talk.
It depends. It depends on you, but it depends on, a lot of it really depends on awareness, being aware when you're doing it, being aware why you're doing it. What need are you trying to meet by criticizing? You know, behind every criticism is a need. So when you criticize, what's your need? It's good to ask yourself that. I mean, think about the last person you criticized, and now think, what's your need? To be heard, you want affection. You know, I have this person who's madly in love with me, and she criticizes me all the time because I'm not madly in love with her. I mean, it's not amorous love, it's like disciple love, you know. But I don't reciprocate because of her behavior, and so then she criticizes me. So behind the criticism is actually saying, you know, I want to be loved by you, but I'm not. So you have to see what's behind your criticism. And what need are you trying to fulfill? Sometimes it's to be recognized. Sometimes it's to feel good about yourself. You know, she plays the flute. She's amazing. And if I can put her down, it makes me feel better because I don't play the flute as well. And if I can convince myself, you know, she's not as good as everybody thinks, I feel better. Right? So I have to understand my need. What's my need to criticize? So that's important.
I think one important thing to learn is that if you want to get affection or reciprocation, you should never go from the side of criticism. It never brings result. It's so stupid. And you do it again and again, and it never brings result, and you still think it will bring. And I think it's the most idiotic thing to do.
Yeah. It's destructive. Criticism Well, let me explain something. My wife and I were trained by a company to teach marriage workshops, and they studied couples for 40 years. 40 years. Studied 3,000 couples over 40 years, and many of these couples they studied for like the next 10, 20 years. And they were trying to determine what makes a good relationship and what makes a bad one. And so by studying couples over 40 years, they can put a couple together and say, talk about something that's a problem for you. So they start talking about it. Within 15 minutes of watching how that couple argues, they can predict whether, with 93% accuracy, in 15 minutes, they can predict whether or not they're going to stay married. And the reason they can do that, and it's really easy, you can do it also. And the reason they can do that is they, from their study over 40 years, they found that there's 4 things that every couple that ends up in divorce does. And when they see them doing this, it's like, okay, there's the disease, it's guaranteed. And one of them is criticism. And when criticism escalates, then what happens, the next step is condemnation. You go above the person, you put yourself, and your criticism now comes from this position. I'm great, you're nothing. And they said, when it gets to that level, when you're condemning a person, self-righteous, there's 100% guarantee it's over. Even if you don't divorce, there's no relationship left. So relationships are based on, so what they realize, relationship has to be based on admiration, trust, respect. So it confirms what you're saying. That it's one of the worst things for a relationship. And if you criticize another Vaishnava, that means basically you're destroying your relationship. You have no relationship with that person. You don't want it. I guess you don't want the relationship. Yes?
Could you say the other 3 things that make the couple end up in divorce?
Yeah, well, criticism, then, how do they say it? Condemn, I forget the word.
Belittling.
What?
Belittling. This
It-
is the worst.
It's,
To belittle the other person.
yeah, but they have a word for it. I think it's
Contempt?
contempt. Yeah, that's it. Contempt. Contemptuous just means you become self-righteous. That you put yourself above. You're just talking down to the person. You're so stupid. You're idiotic. Just
You
do what I,
despise a person.
yeah, do what I say. Or you don't have a brain to even think for yourself. So you become self-righteous. And the next one is defensiveness. So you're trying to tell somebody, really, when you do this, it upsets me. And defensiveness is they'll just defend themselves. You do it also. Or, I never do that. Or why you bother me? Get away. They'll defend themselves. And then the last one is you just stop listening. So the person talks to you, you just, I don't want to hear. Communication stuff. So those were the 4 that they found that pretty much guaranteed you're on your way to divorce. And so, and they predicted 93%. And I would think the other 7% were probably pretty bad marriages. They just stayed together. Or maybe they changed. But every relationship is based on trust and respect and affection. So when you criticize, it undermines all trust, respect, and affection. Right? Have you noticed that if you have affection for someone, it's really hard to criticize them, even if they do something wrong? So that's a sign that you have affection for someone, that even if they do something wrong, you're not inclined to criticize them because you like them too much. There's so much good about them. Your heart can't focus on what you don't like. There's no place in your heart for enmity when you have affection. And so that's the cure to a bad relationship. And this is what they say in the Course. It's increase. The antidote to these 4 is increasing affection. So they do things that increase affection. And when affection increases, the other 4 go away. It's interesting, right? And of course, for us as devotees, affection it's a natural sign of a devotee. Right? So if I don't have affection for other devotees, if I need to put other people down or show off, that's just material consciousness. It has no place in the spiritual world. And I think the problem is a lot of us come to Krishna consciousness, but we don't actually adjust to the spiritual world. We wear the dhoti, kurta, shari, tila, kanti mala, japa mala. We look the part, but inside it's kind of like everything's, the suitcase is still full. We didn't take anything out. That's the problem. That's not what Prabhupada's teaching us. And then a lot of times, people in that situation, they don't read Prabhupada's books, so it doesn't get better. And so that material consciousness just remains. And what's worse is that material consciousness remains in the name of I'm Krishna conscious. Self-righteousness and yeah. That's not what Prabhupada was thinking of in Vrindavan when he's going to start this movement. A bunch of materialistic people wearing dhotis and saris and criticizing one another. So it's a great service to Prabhupada to be appreciative of devotees and not criticize. Yes?
I think in this corner it gets worse because we read about certain standards and then we expect everybody but myself. I don't expect myself, but I expect everybody be on a high standard. Yeah. And if they're not, okay, so that's, I will criticize that.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. He's saying that we have such high standards, there's so much to criticize people about. And I remember when I was young, and I hate to describe this, but it's good. It makes the point. So, you meet with your friends, on Monday, go, what'd you do this weekend? I went out and got drunk, and I got all these girls, and we went off and we did this and that. All sinful things, and you say, wow, cool, right? There's no standard of judgment. So, we're not criticizing because we have no standard. It's like everything we do is bad and we think that's good. Then you become a devotee, you read in the book, this is what a devotee is, you think everyone you're looking at is a pure devotee, and then all of a sudden you realize they're not, and you become disillusioned and become critical. So I feel like when someone joins ISKCON, they need to be warned. It said, here are potential dangers, that you're going to have higher standards, you're going to fall short, others are going to fall short, and you're going to expect them not to fall short. And the reason you expect them not to fall short, not only is because of the books, it's because you need them not to fall short, because you're always falling short. And if you're around other people falling short, you don't like that, right? If I'm going on a diet, okay, only salads, right? I don't want to sit around with people eating pizza and ice cream. It's just like, get out of my house. How am I going to eat salad with you eating pizza and ice cream? Going, oh, it's so good. Mahatma Prabhu, you should just taste a little. No, get out of here. I don't want that. I'll criticize you. Right? So you want people to live in a way that's difficult for you. You don't like it when they fall short, isn't it? Yeah. So then we tend to criticize people for the weaknesses we have. Because we're so weak, we can't follow. We want them to follow so we can follow. So we're caught in this trap. And then the other trap is guilt and shame. No, I can't follow it. So now I feel guilt. If I don't criticize them, I criticize myself. Devotee was telling me, I was with an old friend of mine in Vrindavan, and he was telling me that Mother Urmila was giving a class, and she said, he gave a really good example, I love this. She said, when a child is starting to walk and they get up, everybody claps, but they always fall over, right? And then they get up again, and they walk on, and then they fall down. And they get up again, everybody claps. She said, but in ISKCON, we don't clap when they stand up, we just sneer when they fall down. He said, so why aren't we clapping when someone's trying? Why are we condemning when they fall and not clapping when they're successful? And so that's what we have to be. Like appreciate, we're all conditioned souls. Just the fact we're here in Vrindavan, that's amazing. I mean, Mayapur. It's the same thing. Yeah. My heart is Vrindavan. When I walk around Mayapur, no matter like what, sometimes people say, so-and-so, they get up late and they watch TV at night and this and that. And I think, yeah, maybe, but somehow they're in Mayapur. Like, it's not like everybody can live in Mayapur, like it must be sincere to want to be here. And you all must be sincere because you could be anywhere right now. You could be, you could take a vacation anywhere. You could go to South India on the beach and drink coconuts and go swimming, but you're here. So, I appreciate that. And it's so easy to appreciate devotees. If you want to. It's so easy to criticize. If you want to. Because everyone is a walking billboard of faults. And you can see millions of faults if that's what you're looking for. Believe me, we all have them. But if you're going to clap because, hey, you're in Mayapur, hey, you're chanting your rounds. I saw you chanting your rounds this morning. Hey. Saw you dancing the kirtan last night. Hey. Right? That's how we do it. And if you're like that, you'll be happy. And if you're criticizing, you're never going to be happy. And we're criticizing because we're not happy. So it's like it's a catch-22. It's like, we're not happy, we criticize. And then we criticize, we're not happy. It's like they found out that shopping makes people depressed. And they also found out that depressed people go shopping. Criticism will make you unhappy. And if you're unhappy, you'll criticize. Right? Hare Krishna. So, yeah, there are a lot of paradoxes in spiritual life, in so-called spiritual life. And we don't want to be embodiments of those paradoxes, do we? Do we? No, we don't. Okay, so we do kirtan? Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to do kirtan now. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Om Premanandi Hari Bol.